I'm excited to introduce today's podcast guest, Robert Benton. One of the best human beings I've met in the channel, someone I enjoy spending time with, and someone that you're going to enjoy learning from. You see, his story is going to resonate for a lot of MSPs that started out as a MSP business owner almost by accident, stumbled into the opportunity, ended up growing a business slowly and then faster and faster as he started to figure out sales and marketing, and ended up selling and retiring a very comfortable life. It's something that I know you're interested in, just like most people are. Enjoy. Robert, I am so excited to welcome you to the Grow Limitless podcast. You're one of those people that I just love spending time with. You've got a great energy about you. You've got a great story to tell. And frankly, you're just kind of like a guy that deserved a win that did. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about your story. Thank you for joining us, man. I appreciate you coming aboard.
Oh, thank you, Terry. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Awesome, Robert. So, you're calling in from your RV. You're living the life that so many MSPs dream of living, comfortably retired, living the lifestyle that you want to live, traveling the world, and doing that on the proceeds of successfully selling your MSP. Robert, before we get started with the past, man, what's it like to be Robert Benton right now, man? How does it feel?
It feels wonderful. I'll be honest with you. I can say I've been blessed numerous times along the way with people and, opportunities and, you know, customers. I mean, Morgatopia, a lot of different people along the way. But the biggest thing is I just really listened. And that's what I'm doing now is I'm listening to the people who are retired and I'm taking their guidance.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Robert, it's an awesome story to tell. And one day I hope to join you there. I failed at retiring one time. I'm hoping I nail it the next time. I guess get us kicked off, Robert. Obviously you had an MSP. That's why you're on here. But walk us through your journey before that. What did you do before you owned an MSP, and what led you to take that entrepreneurial jump to starting your own?
Well, so I was one of those employees that you really didn't want because I always strived for something different. Nothing was ever processed well enough for me, right? So I was a bagger at Kroger's and I had to figure out that process and I had to improve it. And then I was a checker and that's where I learned 10 key because I had to improve that. And then, factory work. And it was just none of it ever set well because I had this drive in me to make the process better. And so honestly, I got fired from my last job. And I was like, you know what? IT, I've been doing, uh, I've been doing PCs ever since I was 12, probably 19, 20 at this point. And I'm just like, I'm just going to quit, or I'm sorry, I got fired and I'm just not going to do anything until I find my first IT job. So I searched the papers for 3 months. I found one in Nashville, Tennessee, drove up, waited on the small business owner for 5 hours while he was on a job. And I sat in his waiting room that long. The guy walked in and said, "You're still here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I need a job." And interviewed, got hired on the spot, worked for him for 5 years, learned how to do it right, and really care about the customer, build that trust. And then I started my own, and it was all break fix. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that people trusted me to help fix their systems, and there was a value to that. I didn't know what that value was. I just kind of made enough to pay rent.
And that job was that you were what would that company do? Were they a technology service company? Or
They
were they?
were.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. So he built servers for the small to medium business. We did networking. We actually hand soldered printer cables. If you go back as far as the old AB switches, going from serial ports and
Yeah.
HPs and all that,
Wow.
right? So I used to hand solder all those cables and but again, because I was his only tech, I worked hand in hand learning the processes and purchase orders and again just good trust and good quality customer service.
Wow. That's a really valuable lesson at such an early age. Now, walk me. What's the age you were at when this happened?
I was probably 20, 21 at this point
Okay.
because I
Okay.
started my company that would have been around 2002, 2003. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's really interesting. And then, so you learn the importance of taking care of the customer, hard work, discipline. What led you to leave? It sounds like you had a comfortable thing going. You were learning a lot. What made you take the leap of faith to go out on your own, or was there a step in between?
Well, yeah, there actually was. So I got to know my biological father at that point,
Oh, okay.
and I knew that I wanted to do something different. So he actually afforded me the opportunity to go work for him while I started the company. And I worked for him, I would say maybe a year while I started the company, and I just kept acquiring customers. And then I sat down with him one day and I said, Dad, I said, I'm really thinking about doing this on my own. And he goes, Well, that's really what I did. So thank you for helping us out. Go
And
about your way. And I
wow.
started it, and yeah.
And so when you started your MSP, I was in Nashville, I'm assuming, kind of in the greater Nashville area.
Really, it was more focused on Rutherford County because
Okay.
that's where I was actually living at the time. I
Okay.
had one customer, and I just started door knocking in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, introducing myself. Hey, I'm Robert Benton. I'm starting this IT company. Would love to work with you. And I met a business owner, Dwayne Carvinen from Murfreesboro Insurance Company,
Okay.
who has long since died, unfortunately. But he introduced me to an organization called BNI,
Okay.
and I joined it, and I was a member of that for 12 years, and that's how I grew my reputation. And I just grew my customer base.
Wow.
But
I've heard, I've heard BNI. Some people have great success stories, and some people say that it kind of starts off good and then quickly dies down. Was that able to sustain your growth over time? Walk me through your growth journey. When was this relative to now? And tell me about kind of your growth rate in those early years.
Well, really, I was 100% break fix. So
Okay.
I knew that if I didn't bill, I didn't make any money. So that was my encouragement to actually get out there. And because my particular BNI group was heavily invested in the local chamber, I became a chamber diplomat. And so I had multiple mentors through that journey that was like, hey, you need to know this person, you need to know that person. So, again, extremely blessed with all the people who saw me and actually took me under their wing. And then I just started realizing, hey, if I can sell it for $1 and I can buy it for 60 cents, I make 40%. Right. So I didn't go to college, I didn't learn all this. This is just, to me, it was just common sense. And so I just did more of selling it for $1 and buying it for 60. You know? And of course, your time is just your time. So once I started increasing my rate and I started finding more and more clients, then I started realizing that I was leaving money on the table because, as with a lot of service industries, they keep bringing on more and more clients, but then they keep pushing the good ones off. So then it made sense to me, if I'm leaving hours on the table, I should hire someone, train them, and then I'd build twice as much.
Interesting. That's some valuable lessons there. It sounds to me like you start off like a lot of MSPs do, kind of an accidental entrepreneur, if you will. You kind of didn't go in with that, grand scheme plan, but you got yourself in a situation with your dad where you had learned a lot and got your first customer. And it sounds to me like you had a little word of encouragement to get
Yep.
you out there. And then once you're out there, you had to learn some valuable lessons. You had to charge what your time's worth if
Yeah.
you wanted to make money. And it's interesting. And so how long did it take before you hired your first employee?
It probably was a year and a half, maybe,
Oh wow. Okay.
maybe even
Okay.
two. I grew quite a bit because there was only two IT companies in Murfreesboro at that particular time. Um, and so there was a lot of demand, but not a lot of businesses. And so again, I just extremely blessed, right? I mean, I just started acquiring customers, and then um, one of the customers that I acquired was a company called Carlson Supply Company, and the man who ran that, he went by Coon, which of course we're in, Rutherford County, Tennessee, right? So we're southern. But Coon was extremely intelligent in how he ran his business. And so he invited me to sit at the manager's meeting once a month to actually let his team know what was happening as far as the IT goes. Well, on that first meeting, on that first day of that first meeting that I sat in there, and I sat at the table with the business owners, the sons of the business owners, and all the managers, I quickly realized this is where you want to be. You don't want to be the guy who comes in and fixes a monitor. You don't want to be the vendor. You want to be the guy sitting at the table. So from that day on, I focused on being the guy sitting at the table. And from that, I dealt with the owners. I dealt with them from a mindset of helping them manage the IT and not being a vendor. And I really think that set me apart because uh, and I can tell you lesson after lesson after lesson. But, one of the things that I tried to do inside my MSP is when I met with the owner, I presented them with a budget on day one because I didn't want to have to come to that business owner and go, hey, I need approval for a $300 memory chip. I need approval for a $1,000 computer. I should tell you that on the front end because I can forecast your budgeting and go, I need $20,000 this year because we need a new server and we need 3 new PCs. If you'll approve this, I'll make it happen. Right? That's not a vendor. That is a trusted employee. And that's where I focused my strategy on.
Wow. That sounds like a very sound way of sort of elevating your importance to that business, the relationship depth, and probably gives you a lot more job security and influence when you're operating at that level as that trusted advisor on day one. What gave you the idea to do that? That's not normal. Most IT people kind of stay in their lane and take what they're given, and they don't sort of push themselves into the boardroom. That's a pretty big time thought there.
Well, the biggest thing is, again, being very social, being very personable. I would just introduce myself, and I knew that I needed to be at that table because as business owners, we don't hire employees. I didn't hire my COO so I could babysit him. I hired him to update me once a week, once every 3 weeks, once a month on how the business ran. Right. So if I got to manage that, then I might as well do it myself. So that mindset was with the majority of my clients. Hey, I don't need you to manage me, right? I run a successful IT business. You need me to manage your environment. So here's how I structure my business. And the majority of the customers were thankful for that because they did have to manage the IT. They had to, you're a $40 million a year company and you're having to approve, as CEO of the company, you're having to approve a $150 memory chip upgrade. Well, you spent $500 in your time, you know, approving that to make sure that it was bought and manage it. I mean, I didn't want to put you in that situation. Let me do my job and I'll charge you a fair price for it.
That's awesome. Tell me about your client retention. That strategy is probably seems to me something that would create clients for long term versus more transactional level, superficial relationships. Did you find that it translated into tight client retention?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We all know we've got our class A you got your class A, B, C, and D clients. And so my class A and B clients fell under that model, and those would never leave. One of the reasons why I sold, and this is, going down part of the podcast, but one of the reasons I sold is because those high value customers were merging and selling off because they had the money. They had already done their time. And so I saw that and I'm like, okay, so now everyone's left with C and D clients, and I didn't want to be in that business model.
Interesting. Okay. So you have this unique approach to going deeper in the relationship, establishing a budget up front, building a deep relation with the business owner. how did your business grow over time? Kind of walk us through the journey from and your approach to growth and your approach to retention and just success in business over the course of your MSP's life.
Well, so one, I had extremely good people. I had people who I really empowered. Um, are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah, sure
Okay, there.
can.
Yeah, sorry. I'm actually running off Starlink, so I may get a blip here and there.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
That's awesome.
But when my COO and I sat down, we both agreed that we needed to empower our people, right? So I didn't sit behind a desk and actually develop brand new policies. We took those policies to the people who who it directly affected. And then we're like, okay, what is it that you think about this policy? How is it going to interrupt your day? Is it good? Is it bad? And through that empowerment, we then also taught them that you're the people who manage this company's IT. So don't look at it as you need to fix a PC or you need to fix a printer. Is that printer so old that it needs to be replaced? Make that judgment call. Is that PC so old it needs to be replaced? Is that server so old it needs to be replaced, right? So look at it from you're the IT administrator of this company. What is it that we need to make sure that this company functions? Because downtime equals money. So if you're a $50 million a year company and you've got 200 employees and you're constantly up and down, right? Something's broken in that model. Well, your job is to figure that out before that company goes down. So with that mindset, we would get a lot more projects because we didn't leave PCs for 10 years. We didn't leave servers for 8 years. We were on a constant rotation of that. So it was through constant projects and then just making sure that we took care of the customer. So growth was really through that model.
Very interesting. Okay. Um, all right. So how did you get customers? Were you focused on word of mouth and the BNI solution, or kind of walk me through that as you kind of grew and develop and grew and develop? How did your approach to getting big enough to sell and retire? Walk me through that journey.
Yeah, so at first it was definitely word of mouth, and
Okay.
then uh, as so I was break fix, and I went to one of my mentor friends, and I said, "How is it? How do I do this managed services model? Because when I bill an hour, I trust that that hour created value." And I don't understand how you can create value in the managed services model because they're paying me and I may not do anything that month. And so I learned that lesson about being proactive versus being reactive to
Right.
everything. So that really grew my model as I sat down and I talked with customers. And now I had reoccurring revenue that I could forecast budgets. I could actually I can hire people on, and then I just started focusing on that. And once I had enough money that made sense, I started hiring key people, right? So I hired my COO. I I I promoted my CTO. I promoted my CFO, and putting the right people in place allowed me to quit working in the business and started working on the business. And so then I started looking at, okay, what are the models that I can sell? What makes the most sense? And we had a few different plans. And of course, we could argue about plans all day. I have sitting in all these conferences, but I did it. So that's all I can say is my particular model worked for my region.
Something you said just kind of jumped out at me. You were able to work on your business. I
Mhm.
think so many people kind of get stuck in the day to day grinding of the machine that they never just step back, step up, look at it overall, and just actually spend conscious time in to work on your business. What are some things that maybe some of the lessons learned, some of the wise moves, maybe on accident or on purpose, that you made during those times that you're able to kind of reflect on now?
Yeah. Um, I think the biggest thing is working hard to get to the point where you can afford that luxury. right? And so we fired a client that was, or I fired a client that was 15% of my business because they were probably 50% of my tickets, right? And so I lost $320,000 that year in actual revenue. But every one of my employees thanked me, right? They were just extremely noisy. And so with that, I realized how much time I wasn't spending on the clients who were waiting for me. And those are the clients that had the money. And so as I started focusing on them, and then I was able to hire people to do the mundane tasks that I was doing that I shouldn't have been doing. Now I start finding myself where I can focus on growing the business with my COO, and we can start having meetings talking about, are we making money? Are we not making money? What is it that we're spending on X? And am I, and so at that point I joined Arlen's group, which I saw his podcast, his podcast that he did with the HTG. And I learned about numbers and I learned about accountability, right? And so if I'm sitting here fixing a PC, I'm not out meeting with clients, growing my business. Does
Wow,
that, I hope that answers your question.
yeah, it does. It does.
Yes.
I didn't realize there was as much of an Arlen link as it sounds like there is. He kind of, HTG slash, Evolve really kind of forces you to pull you out of the office to work on your business for a few days. It almost, is that where you got that discipline, or is that something that came naturally to you to physically disconnect and work?
Oh no, I fought it. I fought it tooth and nail because I love IT. I love fixing server issues. I love being the guy who can sit with a problem and fix it. Right. So, my COO was the one that threw me out of service. He's like, you either get in service and you manage it, or you get out of service and you run this company. And if you know William, you know he's that bold. But I remember sitting at my desk one day and I did stop doing the service. I did stop managing the projects. I had the people for that. And I remember sitting at my desk going, I have nothing to do. I literally have nothing to do. So I need to go call my customers and I need to see how they are and just start touching base with them and start growing this company. And that's when I created momentum. That's when I created growth.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love that because I feel like the natural temptation for so many people is to do what they enjoy doing. And in your case, you love the technical side, but you
Absolutely.
quickly realize through your COO's, wise counsel there is to say, hey, listen, let's, go take care of customers.
Yeah.
Go do what you do best. You help us retain customers, help us get new customers. You focus on the front end and let the service team do their job. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the challenges a lot of CEOs face is that they can't delegate. They can't truly delegate. They feel like they have to have control and they become kind of a bottleneck, right? I mean, kind of like they become the problem because they're trying to add value in too many different places and they're not kind of empowering their team. That sounds like something that you did pretty darn effectively, where you put people in roles that honestly gave them the power to tell you what you needed to hear, which is, Robert, go over here, man. Go take care of relationships. Go be Robert Benton, one of the most loved people probably in your market. My guess is you had deep, great relationships with your clients that you were able to leverage to get opportunities, leverage to weather storms, just kind of build and develop relationships over time versus just, turning wrenches and hitting control out the lead every day.
Yeah. Yeah. We also read a book called Traction, and I'm sure,
Okay.
EOS taught me a lot about how to structure the company. And in reading that, it made me realize that I needed to put the right people in the right seat on the bus. And if you weren't the right person, then you didn't make the seat. And one of the hardest decisions and fights that I had to do in my career was not promote my wife to my COO, which of course created some late nights with her. But once I talked with her about why, and she saw the growth of the company, she realized that it was a really smart decision. But it was really difficult, but that's one of those business owner decisions which you're faced with that you've got to deal with. And obviously it worked out.
Wow. I can only imagine. I've not had to have a similar conversation. I work with my wife as well, as you know, and
Yeah.
it sounds like you're able to navigate a pretty tough situation. So that's impressive, dude. Really impressive. All right, so keep going with this story in terms of your business. It sounds like that was a key inflection point where you started working on your business. You got into Evolve slash HTG. You started to kind of be the CEO and start to evolve and grow and develop and mature the company, get
Yeah.
more operationally mature, and let the services team do what they do best. Um, how far was that before you ended up selling? And walk me through, I guess, that journey. When did you get into HTG?
Oh, I really wish I knew the years, but it had to be, I would say, before 2021, maybe 2015, 2018 ish. But again, it taught me several things about how to run the business. And once I was not working in the business, I was looking for opportunities on how to grow. And of course, I was a chamber member, chamber ambassador. I met with all my clients. I asked them to actually refer me, and um, then I realized that I needed appointments, right? And so I met this company called Marketopia at one of these events.
Great name. Great
Yeah,
name.
yeah, exactly. You may know them, but I was not the ideal customer because I was new. I was tight with my money. I wanted to know everything about how everything worked because that's the way my mind was. But once I sat down, at the end of the day, it was I need lead. I need appointments. And I cannot create the appointments for the growth model that I want to do. And so I signed up with Marketopia. I met you, and again, going back to how I manage the customers on the day of working with Marketopia, I sought you out at that conference. I went to the GrowCon conference, and I made a beeline for you because I wanted to know how is it that I can best utilize your company to help me grow. And I met my caller, and I don't know if I should share numbers, but I got a really good caller with really good sit down appointments, and then I started growing from there. And
Wow.
at that point, the money made sense. And then so my wife Marta had been diagnosed with breast cancer back in '04. And so she decided that she was ready to retire. And I said, well, once you're ready, I'm ready. So we ran the numbers. They all worked out. I found an amazing buyer. Again, great opportunity, and sold. And here I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So that happened quicker than I thought, I guess. First, I commend you for you went to GrowCon, so you were probably kind of in that mental mindset. You took the time to get out of your business to come there. I am sure Marketopia it does a lot of different things, and
Mm.
therefore there's a lot of people working, and therefore it's not cheap.
Yeah.
How was that? As someone who it sounds like you hadn't spent a lot of money in marketing and sales before, but you did spend money on outside advice, right? Evolve and is not cheap, especially when you include all the expenses that come
Oh, yeah.
along with travel and that type of thing. Tell me about that emotional journey. What gave you the courage to do it? What I guess walk me through that decision. What gave you the courage to do it? What made you do it? And why did you pick Marketopia versus so many other solutions out there inside of that Evolve community and outside?
Wow. Because I'm a guy who, once I make a decision, it's done. and I generally make a decision on the spot. So it's good or bad, right? I mean, and
Okay.
so um, I got the call, Jeff. So Jeff called me. We talked. I actually stood him up on the first appointment. My COO met with him, William, and we went to IT Nation, and you guys were there, and Jeff was talking to me, and he and I were hanging out, and I was asking him questions, and then I was actually talking with Marta. I'm like, here's that contract. Here's how much it is. I've never spent this much money in my life. If this doesn't work out, I don't know what we're going to do, but worst case, I just pay it off. I realized that it was a binding contract. I didn't sign this thinking that I would be able to get out of it. I could argue or I could fight my way out of it,
Right.
And so I just signed there. I worked the deal and I signed it there. But then from day one, I get back. I'm like, all right, how do we do this? How do we do that? How do we do this? And that was really a journey for both of us. I think, you and I talked. We had some hiccups in the beginning, but that's because we didn't know the questions to ask. We didn't understand the process. But once I hit the process and I hit the collar, I mean, you know, it just worked at that point.
Yeah. One thing that I always admired about you during your journey was sort of that eager learner. Like,
Mhm.
you have confidence about you. You've had a lot of success in your life. It's not that. It's nothing short of a conscious decision to be a learner, like to have a learner mentality, eager to learn, eager to develop. And you seem to kind of learn from everybody. You learn from the people, your peers, you learn from me, you learn from the training. You just seem to have that open mind. And
Uh-huh.
and I guess I'm curious, how so many MSPs, I feel like there's so much head trash that they've been burned by this toolkit and that subscription and this talking head, and they've kind of got this kind of a negative like attitude, like they're looking for a failure, they're looking for a problem. They come in initially humble but quickly get arrogant, and they're not willing to listen and learn. What gave you that open mind? What led to that sponge mentality? Because as I remember, when you came in, you didn't exactly strike off on your first day and get to 100% year over year growth. You had a journey there too. How did you keep that open mind and that learner's mentality so that you were able to make the transition from the successful person that gave you the courage and the budget to do it
Yeah.
to the person who was truly succeeding in what you were doing? Walk me through that.
Well, um, first and foremost, money gives you the opportunity to make decisions that most people don't make, right? Because they don't have the money. And when I look at businesses who have money, they have made logical decisions that allowed them to make money. Whether it was my clients that were doing 100 million a year, or you, or Arlen, or you just name 100 different companies that we work with. Um, if they have successfully put a business model together, it's either I'm doing it wrong, or it's it's not that you're doing it wrong. I don't understand your process. So help me understand your process. And if we can marry that together, then we should have a successful relationship at that point. Right. But you've got to jump off the cliff. Right. You've got to make that commitment, whether it's Marketopia, whether it's HGG, whether it's a chamber, whether it's BNI, right? Going back to BNI, so many people I've heard that were not successful in that. But then I said, okay, how many times a week did you actually rehearse your 60-second speech? Well, I just thought of it that morning. Okay, so you've got 25 sales guys sitting in your room that you're trying to get them to sell for you. And 60 seconds before you're supposed to talk with them, you're thinking about what to say to them,
Yeah.
right? And so that didn't make sense to me, right? prep, make sure that when you're talking to people that you understand what's happening. And so when I go into these different situations, it's like when I bought this RV, I didn't just decide one day I'm going to buy an RV or this particular model. I researched and I watched 100 YouTube videos and I called dealers and I met with dealers and I got pricing and I understood how the model worked before I bought it. Now I'm experiencing everything that I didn't research, you know. But I think so many people go into business and go into these relationships with vendors that are like, okay, this should just work. You should make it happen, that I should be able to sit back and stuff just happen. No, it doesn't work that way. Just like our customers don't hire us and we go in and go, okay, snap, all your servers work fine and all your
Right.
PCs work fine and all your networking is fixed. No, it's a process. That's why we do discoveries. That's why we upgrade equipment, right? That's our focus is to create a whole solution, and we have to do that together.
Yeah. I love that. And I feel like you kind of capitalize on every opportunity. Like I remember many one-on-one conversations with you. I remember overcoming objections that you had or that you were encountering. And I remember you really working with your peers. You were one of those that didn't come in kind of a pompous kind of, I know it all. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm better than you. I'm Robert Benton, for goodness sakes. Even though you were very successful in your own right, you came in and you gravitated toward the people who were kicking butt and learned from them, just as you would, training and that type of thing. Um,
Yep.
Interesting. In your experience, the HTG group, um, obviously Arlen, I think, is one of the most fantastic people in the industry by a long shot, frankly, probably in the world. But um, what did you find the Marketopia community and the peer groups? How did that complement the HTG instruction and that type of thing? Because you succeeded at a level that a lot of HTG companies don't. What I guess what did you see in the two groups? How did you balance any conflicts of advice and systems between them? Why invest your time in two different communities?
Gosh, that's a good question. Never really thought about that. But um, for my model, I just took advice from a lot of different people. So HTG taught me to put what I thought about numbers on paper. So again, if I sell it for $1 and I buy it for 60 cents, I'm making 40%, right? I'm making 40 cents on the dollar.
Right.
That's called EBITDA. If there's no other expenses, that's called EBITDA, right?
Yep.
What HCG taught me is to put a marketing budget into place, to put salary budgets into place, to put all these different things into place, to then get a percentage of value, to actually get W-2 multiples and all these different numbers that I didn't even know existed. And then, but one of those numbers was marketing, and I had $0. And my group was like, you can't have $0. So you need to spend money on marketing. And so I started looking at marketing companies, right? Because I wanted to grow. I knew I needed to spend money on marketing, and it wasn't a number that I ever invested in. And so once I started talking with you guys, you helped me understand that number, and that. So if I'm going to take a number and I'm going to put it in marketing, where do I focus those numbers? And I think I actually asked you this, right? How is it that I'm taking X dollar and it's breaking up because I have to break it up inside this budget? And you helped me understand those numbers, and they just made sense. And so when I went back to my group, and all of a sudden I had a marketing number and I could break down those numbers and I could explain how that happened. Half the group went, "Wow, how did you do that?" And I just asked questions. I
Yeah.
just, I wanted to learn how to do it.
Interesting. All right. So it sounds to me like obviously we played a role in your journey, which I'm honored to know that. And you know, it also sounds like, your wife's health journey led to some life decisions that led you to sell.
Yeah.
Walk me through that sales process. After you came to the decision, how did you go about it? Um, you know, how did it work? And frankly, what kind of lessons did you learn in that process that maybe someone who's about to go through or wants to go through that same phase, what would you like them to know?
Yeah. So my wife's health started getting worse. Basically the treatments weren't working. And so she came to me and she says that I'm basically done. I'm like, okay, then I'm done. But that was in the back of my mind. I went to a HTG meeting. A good friend of mine, Bill, is part of my group. And we were sitting there with another business owner who was actually talking about selling. And so Bill and I were talking to him. We were friendly, chatting about whether he'd buy it or I'd buy it, and what was it valued? And we knew his numbers, right? Because he was part of our group. And then he left, and Bill and I were talking, and Bill's like, "Well, what about you selling?" I'm like, "I'm never gonna sell." There's a number. I'm like, "There's always a number." And I went back and I talked with Marta, and I figured out a number. Now, this was August of 21. Well, I'm sorry, this was before August. This was maybe June-ish when we had our June quarterly meeting. Um, obviously, you know, obviously we were in the middle of COVID. I made a tremendous amount of money during COVID. And that was because our customers had to go remote. So all the customers that I called in February that I'm like, hey, I think this is going down. You need to go remote. They're like, no, we're not going remote unless they force us. Well, they forced them. And all of a sudden we're like, okay, here's 200 projects and we've got to charge a premium because you want to be at the top of the list. And I've got to hire people. And so I made a really good amount of cash during COVID. And then I made the money off of selling the company. But if you're looking for advice, one of my challenges was, and again, maybe I'm just blessed, I, and this is the a unicorn, but I sold for a cash amount that was um, beneficial to both parties, I think, or I'd like to think so. But because he already knew my numbers and I wasn't fudging numbers, I wasn't hiding money. I mean, he had been part of my group for 2 years and had 2 years of actual numbers sitting in front of him. He knew what the company was worth and he knew my growth potential. Um, so one of the challenges that we had was because Bill is in his 60s. Um, if we finance this and something happened to him, God forbid, something quick happened to him, I felt that the family would come in and gut the company. Now, I don't know anything about his family. I'm just saying when you're the owner and no one else in your family has anything to do with the business, they're not going to step in and run this business. They're going to gut it and they're actually going to cash it out. And I had the fear that if that happened, I wouldn't get paid. And now I'm in the middle of a lawsuit. I've sold all my customers. There's been a transition. And now I'm in the middle of this big lawsuit fighting for my life and I'm back working again. So I came to Bill with that. I'm like, hey, here's the fear that I have. What are the options? Whether it's guaranteed life insurance or guaranteed bank loans. And we talked about it and he contacted his bank and he wrote a check. So the bank financed the entire thing. So I walked away with the full amount sitting in the bank, which allowed me to then take that money, invest it, and now I'm living off those investment returns versus living off my buyout.
Wow, that's awesome. I don't, we're getting toward the end of our time together, but I do not want to ignore the fact that you've used the word blessed a lot of times. Robert, what role does religion play in your decision making in business and in life? And what kind of role did God have in helping you get where you are today?
Oh, tremendous role. I thank God every day for where I'm at today. I I believe that he had his hand in letting Marta live for 18 years with breast cancer. He's got his hand on my current wife through her journey, through our journey in this. But but whether you believe in God or not, you have to realize that if you're successful, that you've got blessings from somewhere. So be thankful. If not for my God, be thankful for the blessings that other people have given you, right? And so that's when I say blessings, I mean my God, but I also mean I'm blessed by the people who I've come across who have helped me along the journey as well.
Love that. I think it's a challenging thing in business to bring in religion, but I feel like a lot of people successfully do it. For all those that are scared to do it, to invite God in and have Him be a part of the operation of your company and the decisions of your company. To me, it's like it's kind of a no brainer, but it's refreshing to hear you say it so openly.
Yeah.
Robert, if there was a Robert Benton that was trying to you live the lifestyle that I think a lot of people live. You're free. You have like you say, investments yielding what they need to pay your expenses. You're traveling the world in an insane RV. We're not talking about like a pop-up camper here. We're
Yeah.
talking about, I don't know, like what, a 10, 12,000 square foot estate that you have on wheels there. I don't know. It's the
wish.
biggest
Yeah.
camper I've ever seen.
Yeah. I wish.
But it's cool to see that. And I think it's something that a lot of people are looking for right now.
Yeah.
Simple, freedom, travel, comfort, stress-free, or at least relatively speaking. You have the money coming in, so you're kind of where a lot of people want to go. If you were giving advice to Robert Benton 10 years ago, what would it be? How would you help them get where you are today? Or, even better, I guess, if you could have the benefit of hindsight.
Oh gosh. You're supposed to send me these questions.
I want
No, you weren't supposed to.
the real deal, Robert.
Yeah. Man, that's a good one.
You've shared a lot so far, so I don't want to beat you up too much on it, but I
No.
feel like you got a lot. Not only do you have a lot of wisdom, Robert, you're very good at bringing it out because
Yeah.
you're so I don't know, scripted, non-formal. You're just kind of like a great dude that just loves to help people. So if you have any other words of wisdom, please do share.
Yeah. If I was to go back on myself, I would say do everything you did again, but be more mindful of the interaction you have with people, right? Look for others to mentor as you're going through this journey, right? Don't be so scared to talk with other people going down this to talk with other people going down the same path, because I think, to me, as I was going down this journey and learning, and I had people come to me looking for that, and I was happy to help them, but I didn't spend the time that maybe I have now to spend. Right.
Yeah.
So be more mindful of the people around you seeking help.
Kind of go-giver mentality to pull in a little more, Ellen. Yeah, I love that. Robert, I can tell you, as someone who's seen you on the receiving end of advice and seeing you give it, you're a pleasure to work with. You're a pleasure to help. You're a pleasure to be helped by. You've just got one of those personalities about you, and I don't know if that's God's spirit in you, but it's you can feel it. You're just a genuine human being that frankly, you epitomize my why. And I want you to know that because, there are days where it's harder than others. Running Marketopia has certainly not been an easy a chapter in my life. But when I look back and say, Terry, what's your why? It's people like Robert Benton the people who deserve to win, the people who are good people, the people who are honest, the people who are doing it the right way. And no one's perfect, Robert, but you've done a lot of things right. And I am not at all surprised that God's blessed you with the life that you're enjoying right now, my friend. I love it. I love the smile that you have. I even love the partner in life that you've chosen to enjoy this chapter with. She's cut from the same cloth you are, my friend. So I appreciate you coming in, sharing your story, and I appreciate you and every opportunity you take to give back to the community, both within inside the Marketopia ecosystem and outside, dude. You're one of those people that I love to work with, and I think everyone would benefit from a conversation with Robert Benton. So I'd encourage anyone who's listening to look him up on LinkedIn, reach out. He's the kind of person that is where you're trying to go, and has gone through a lot of things and learned a lot of lessons that he loves to share. So, Robert, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming aboard.
Absolutely. Thank you, Terry.
All right, no problem. Have a good one.
You too.